Are we almost ready?
I'm ready whenever you are.
All right, call to order for the Berlin Finance Committee meeting. Open session public meetings are subject to being recorded. Your image and voice will be recorded. All right, first order of business, let's approve our minutes. So we have the minutes from a town meeting of May 6th.
I'll make a motion to approve the meetings as edited.
Okay, I'll second that. Any questions on those minutes?
No,
All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Julie, I.
All right, passes 3-0. Now the minutes of the May 10th meeting. We have a motion for those.
I'll make a motion to approve the May 10th minutes.
All right, I'll second that. Any other discussion on those minutes?
Nope.
All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Julie, I.
All right, passes 3-0. And let's do the reserve fund transfer, get that done first. So June. You have it right here.
Yep, we have a request for a reserve fund transfer coming out of the reserve fund for the election expenses due to additional costs of the election system and software setup, layout, and coding. And also the cost of the ballots was more than what was expected. She currently has no money in the account. And
Okay, and
there's,
this is for the existing election that just happened.
yes,
Okay,
I'm gonna log on.
so
For the, this is the May 13 election. Yeah,
yes.
thanks, Scott.
Then you don't have. to
So
sign
this
it.
is a request from reserve funds of $1,000 to go to the, let's see, the elections expenses. Right, any? All right, I guess that's the motion.
You made the motion, I'll second the motion.
All right, any further discussion on that?
None for me.
All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Julie, I.
All right, passes 3-0. How are you gonna sign this, Mary?
Well, I can send an email approval, June. What do you want? I can come in, I'm gonna be there tomorrow afternoon.
you're okay. If you want to just send me an email, I'll use that and attach it to the form.
Okay. And June, you distributed that reserve fund transfer, so I can reply to it and say I approve, right?
Yes, you can.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and here's. Paper.
And then I think from there you can use a co-host.
Yeah, and we'll just watch in case Cliff does recover and able to attend. We'll bring him in. All right, next item of business is the special town meeting and obviously the school budget. So why don't we go over first what the draft, at least at this point, is of the budget. So I'll let you cover it, Kristen.
All right, so this is a little bit different than what we're used to seeing. So I wanted to give you a hard copy of it to look at. The select board on Monday night did set the date, time, and location of the special town meeting as Monday, the 17th of June at 6:30 p.m. And we have confirmed that the gym at Berlin Memorial School is available. So they opened and closed the warrant as well on Monday night. There is one article, which is the FY 2025 Regional School District Budget. And as I did at the select board meeting, if you'll indulge me, I'll just read the article for the folks who are online. It is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate borrow and or transfer from available funds, or otherwise provide all necessary sums of money to defray the town's expenses for general fund budget expenses for the regional school district assessment for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2024, and ending on June 30th, 2025, or take any action relative thereto. And the proposed motion at this time is based on, well, this will be the motion, excuse me. The motion is based on the letter that we received from the schools with a revised budget. And that number is in the amount of $8,691,718. That is the budget number needed to fund the regional school district assessment as laid out in the warrant. And it is broken out in the description, but we do need to have town meeting vote on the bottom line number. That is in accordance with guidance we've been given from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, as well as Town Council. So as you will see, if you go down to where it's broken out between the requests that we received from the school in terms of the revised budget, which is $400,000 less than what was presented at town meeting. That $400,000 less comes from Berlin Memorial School capital. They have removed the HVAC system from the capital request. So that still leaves a difference of $741,312, which would be the difference between what town meeting approved, which was $7,950,406, and the new assessment of $8,691,718. So as I mentioned, request is $400,000 less than the budget that the district requested at the May 6th town meeting. Obviously, there's a blank in here for the Finance Committee's recommendation. And other than that, it's a pretty simple, straightforward warrant that needs to be mailed out, just so everyone knows, according to the town bylaws, to all households in town at least 14 days prior to that town meeting. So that is June 3rd, if I remember correctly.
So what date do you have to have it at the printers and if you have to mail them?
So the good news is because this is a smaller warrant, they only have a 3-day lead time. So because it's only a 2-page double-sided warrant. So June 3rd, I would need to have it to them. I believe they meant business days, but I will confirm that. If it's business days, it would be next Wednesday, the 29th.
Okay,
So it still doesn't give us a whole lot of time for discussion, but let me confirm that date with them.
okay. And then, as we did for the regular annual town meetings, if we can't get the information we need to make a decision before you print, would we just be making that on the floor at the special town meeting?
You can, if that's the vote of the Finance Committee, what I can put in this recommendation spot is recommendation to be made at town meeting.
Okay, yeah, so that puts us on a very, very tight schedule. Because otherwise, basically, it come down to if there are requests to have this, I mean, some of those schools pushing it on like the weekday, the 14th on a Friday. You basically would had to have had this to the printers this Friday.
Yes, so 3 days lead time. I mean, presuming I know sometimes Clinton Offset works on the weekends, but I don't want to presume they would for this. So my understanding is
Especially
3
being
business
Memorial
days.
Day weekend. on
It
top
is
of-
Memorial Day weekend, yeah.
Okay, so just clarify a few things. I mean, obviously, there's the 5 line item. And of course, obviously, we're in agreement with 3 of those 5 line items. It's just the operating budgets that we're not in agreement with the schools at the moment. The capital assessments for both Berlin Memorial and Tohoto, we're in agreement, and obviously the debt repayment for the school at Tohoto. One thing to highlight too is they removed the $400,000, but that was taken from the Berlin Memorial capital assessment, and that's from the capital, we fund that through free cash, so it does not tap into our free cash by $400,000, but it does not change anything on what the tax levy impact is, since that was not going to be coming out of funds from the tax base. That was funds that were unspent previously. So with the present budget, it's still that the schools have approved is still a 7.5% levy increase. All right, so I had a chance to speak with Carol and also Julie Lee after the select board's meeting on Monday night. Unfortunately, due to a previous commitment, they could not attend tonight's meeting, though I do have a meeting set up to meet with Carol tomorrow, along with the finance person, the contractor that they have in-house that's going over and working on the numbers for us, and it started to get us some data. So we'll be discussing that tomorrow, and likewise, we'll be discussing some of the ideas I have, and also likewise, I want to get the feedback here from this committee of ideas that they may have to help close this gap, because obviously the schools that went back the very next night, and just in terms of the levy increase, they just have not made any attempt to move on the levy part. So it's still 7.5%, and we're at 2.5%. So nothing has closed right at the moment. So let me just give a breakdown of the thoughts I had and what I discussed with Carol and Julie. So the big thing, first of all, is just on the costs that were, what was actually spent on with the Bridges program, because obviously the additional money, again, it's over $700,000 we're dealing with here. It was $350,000 that the schools put in from their school choice and circuit breaker funds, and our $383,000 from the free cash that was put in, and that was money used to fund this Bridges program. So they provided some numbers on this already. If you add up the cost of those, in terms of, my understanding is like 3 full-time positions that were hired for this. There was some expenses, and basically, and then of course there is still all districts special education tuition that is still there. Obviously, this Bridges probably can't cover everything, but when you add up that, it shows a spending of $580,000. So we're still talking about neighborhood of like over $120,000 that, if that is not spent, and if there are savings, as they're trying to imply there are savings, we'd like to see where those savings went. And the discussion would be if we could do a wash of some of this stuff in their budget, in the sense of, so what I'm trying to look at is everything in terms of $75,000 increments, because every $75,000 changes that tax levy changed by 0.5. So if they could get somewhere in the neighborhood, say it was $150,000, that would normally be just going over as excess and deficiency, but we can't use that for this year's budget. It's something that would be available for the following budget. Instead, they do have funds for school choice, a lot of funds there that could be, if they know they're going to have excess, could they add, school choice of $150,000, and knowing that they have the extra excess and deficiency that will replenish school choice the following year. And that alone would, without any cuts, assuming there are savings here, would get us 1 point closer and drop it down from 7.5 levy increase to 6.5. So that's one of the discussions I'm having on that. And that would be, if that's, we just need to see what the numbers are, and what money they have left over, because if there are savings, there needs to be showing where those savings are. So that's one of the thoughts. The other one is, I want to also get to the bottom of what is the math showing savings? I mean, because that's what we haven't seen yet here, because I was able to have some discussion there. I know we had some.
Hey, Scott. Hey,
Yes.
Scott, could you
Yes.
slow down or get closer to your mic? I'm missing some of what you're saying.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next piece is regarding the actual cost and what kind of savings there would be from this Bridges program. So in discussions I actually had with Carol and Julie Monday night, and also even with Lynn Ryan pointing this out to us after the town meeting, the one of the things with our district special education tuition is one of the also reasons we put in, the free cash is if we still had that big expense, the students were still there. The state does reimburse, not everything, but they do a certain percentage based on a certain amount you have to pay upfront, plus then spend 75% of the additional after that. But unfortunately, that comes in the following fiscal year. So if they had been in the system, there would have been an increase in reimbursement in circuit breaker coming from the state that could have been used for this budget. So the problem is when they funded this out of the special, using their own employees for the special education and the information I got, I'm gonna get clarification on this, we don't get reimbursed from the state. So they are taking on the full expense. So one of the things we have to be careful here is understanding what the costs are. Is there savings on this? Because you've been giving us, these numbers here that aren't reflecting also what we will have gotten back in reimbursement. So I know it could be an easy math. It's not something that they're going to be able to give a definitive number on, but there is going to be, they know the number of students, they know the history, and we should also have an idea of what type of savings they're getting by not going out to the, spending the out of district tuition, and then, figure out what type of reimbursement that is, and then figuring out where we are with our spending and what kind of savings there are. Because one of the things that's really clear, I think, at this point is that the spending that they've done right now, they put a floor on the spending so that they didn't have any students that needed out-of-district special education. They've got the employees now, so they are spending that. So I mean, the one positive I can at least see from it offhand would be is it sounds like they could eliminate massive spikes through this program. But at the same time, it seems like they do need a certain level of out-of-district special education students in this program in order to even meet it being break even, and let alone talk about savings. So that's what I want to talk about, is getting that additional information. Another piece of that information we've received so far, gave us some information on salaries. I don't know if that includes benefits. I know they would not be able to identify if the people are taking benefits, if they're taking health insurance, but we can at least identify if it's not including that number. We can at least identify the potential exposure of the additional benefits, the max min on that. Obviously, it could be zero, or the maximum amount, and then using their own number of employees, what could be an average to make sure we have a true accounting of what the expense is. And so this is what I want to try and get, whether I get that information tomorrow, or else we have to wait a little bit, but there isn't obviously much time to wait to get this. So one of it is there really savings?
But I also have a question on that too, because when we talked last year and we did the special match with the free cash, they were also supposed to put up, I forget the number off.
$350,000 combination of school choice and
that wasn't,
circuit breaker.
I don't think that was broken down in the memo they sent us, if they used any of that school choice towards.
Yes, and right, exactly. That's one of my things I've been emphasizing. I've seen things going around, people referring to the 383,000. They have to remember, we're not talking about 383,000. It was over $700,000 that we're talking with here. So they have their own money they put in, and we need to understand, with that combined, how much did they spend this year,
Mhm.
and how much can be, because say if it turns out they had the savings at least this year, or they didn't have to spend it all, if there's the $120,000+ that would be just rolling over to excess and deficiency, they can just put school choice funds this year to this to offset that, and then they'll have that excess deficiency, which they can replenish the school choice next year.
Mhm.
So that and if you get to $150,000, that will be a whole 1 point off the levy increase. So instead of being at 7.5, that would be 6.5. That's the idea I'm thinking of here, and also pushing for the numbers.
Mhm.
So I've talked a lot here, so I'm going to turn over. Mary, do you have questions or comments?
Yeah, Scott, I appreciate your digging through the numbers. I put forward some questions via email to kind of queue up, and some of them I just sent out shortly before the meeting, some were earlier. And my question to the school committee, or the district, whoever is available to answer it, is to see the revenues, see the entire revenue picture. So what we got last Friday from the school district is simply some line item expenses. We didn't see anything on revenue. And a budget is about revenue and expense. A budget balances those two things. So we've not seen, despite frequent requests, a picture of the revenues that are available to the school. And this goes back to the fiscal 23 budget going forward. So it becomes critical that we have a look at the fiscal 24 level services budget. And it becomes critical that we have a look at all of the revenues that are relevant here. And I don't, and then there's the baseline issue that the town voted an operational budget for fiscal 24, which is a different number than the school committee put forward. And this is not a matter for dispute. This is a factual matter of public record. It's what we voted at the May 2023 town meeting. And so that accounts for a great deal of the difference between how the town has looked at this budget and how the school committee has looked at it. And I think we need to reconcile that before anything else is going to work. And I appreciate, Scott, your efforts to find middle ground and to look at, could you please itemize what those savings are with the Bridges program? But remember, we just learned on Friday the 10th that Bridges program was voted favorably by the school committee in June of 2023. So I can't imagine that the school committee, that there was funding, for that program. So now we're talking about savings from it, but the funding that the town voted to deal with that special ed emergency was for that particular purpose. It was not part of the operations budget. And so I think we need to resolve that, Scott. And if we can't resolve it, I don't know what, I don't see a way out of this. I think that's a fundamental issue to be resolved. What is the budget that the town voted for fiscal 24?
Right. Yeah, it is quite clear that the funds, as we were agreed to before town meeting and what was voted and presented at town meeting by myself, is not how the school went and spent those funds. And I mean, if there wasn't, assuming a good intention of trying to find savings, what's not clear is anybody be able to find doing the actual calculations and just presenting to us what those savings were, because town meeting was on May 1st of 2023, and I don't know exact date in June, but though in less than 2 months they had made that decision, and I don't know where those numbers are. That's what we want to get down to.
Well, the problem is, when all of that was going on last year, we never got an answer to our requests for what is a level services budget for the schools. We never got that information. And I think, again, it's a matter of public record. It's a fact what the town voted for the school operational budget for fiscal 24, that vote on May 1, 2023. That number is the number that the town has used in our warrant for this year's town meeting. And it's not the number that the school committee is using in its communications. So my view is the school committee is just plain, the information they're putting out is just not accurate. And it's a huge question in what we're trying to wrestle with right now.
Yes, that is, I agree with you. The information they've been putting out is not accurate regarding what was agreed to last year. And then on top of it, it's like how that was expended. And of course, again, they can't think, we received a partial accounting from Carol, it's 4 days after town meeting of what how that was expended. or at least-
And by the way, that's the first accounting we got all year,
Yes,
was after town meeting. So all of this is very troublesome to me and hard for me to understand. Now, the other thing to remember on the special education funding, Scott, is that if you exceed a certain percent increase in any given year, you can get same year emergency funding. It's my understanding in fiscal 24 that the district, the BMS, qualified for that same year funding, as well as qualifying for the funding that happens the following year. So I think we had two revenue streams we qualified for in the district coming from the circuit breaker special education monies. And we've had no visibility into those revenues, except for what the state published. And I attended the the March 19 meeting of the school committee when the school committee voted on the budget that the town rejected at our town meeting. And there weren't numbers in the budget. The budget that was voted on was a PowerPoint presentation. There were no line items. There was no ability to look at revenues and expenses by category. There was no way to actually look at the numbers in the budget that was voted upon by the school committee on March 19. I did notice what they did report were some revenues for Massachusetts reimbursements on special education, the circuit breaker money. And I pointed out that a significant error was present in the budget voted on, that the Massachusetts revenue for special ed reimbursement was understated by something on the order of $160,000, $170,000. And that's a published number from the state. So again, it's absolutely essential that the district give us a clear picture of revenues going from fiscal 23 through fiscal 25. We have to see those numbers to understand this. And it's, we're here as the finance committee to make recommendations with the taxpayers' interest in mind, with the need of the population of school children in mind, and with the other constituents that have a stake in this. And it's not possible to do our job with this recommendation without the numbers. Again, I really laud you, Scott, for trying to find points of compromise. And it's the same thing, you did the same thing last year. And this is the right spirit of cooperation, but unfortunately, I'm not sure that that's something that we can do.
well, right now, it's like, I think we're working on a cooperation with the administration, which is at this point, it's Carol and her, the guy's name is Michael. That's the finance person for them. So that's where we're going to starting on this and come up with some plans of where we can go. And obviously fill in the numbers just as you've been discussing, because we are still lacking that information. And
Okay.
one of the things the additional emergency funding, I took a note of that because I want to see if anything came from that. I mean, because I'm not sure for this year, obviously they started this Bridges program at the beginning, so they probably took themselves out of additional emergency funding, because I know the additional emergency funding is always just a set dollar amount that they put out, and there's more requests for it than there's money. So it's not a case that they divvy this up among school districts, and there are many that just get zero. So, but I will bring up that question to see if did any of that come in.
Well, we certainly qualified, given the student numbers from last year. Working from memory, that's my recollection, is that the percent increase that we were facing fiscal 23 into fiscal 24, that we qualified for that same year assistance from the state.
I agree with that. Unfortunately, what they did was they then moved away from out-of-district special education, because is that for the tuition, right? I think it specifically is out-of-district tuition, that emergency funding.
I
But
don't know the details, Scott, but I know that there's two revenue streams from the state. We need to look at both of them for this time frame. And
Okay.
that requires us to look back into fiscal 23 because that's what the state does. You have to look at the full 2-year view to understand this. And there are published state numbers. So what the district gives us needs to match what the state has published. But and then one other question, Scott, is in this conversation with the district is, were monies, any of the monies that came through the town of Berlin and the other funds that came from the school revenue, the school choice revenue, were any of those funds expended in Boylston or at Tohoto? Were they contained to Berlin Memorial, or were they used across district?
Yes, I mean, that's what we'll try to figure out here is, again, that those funds were supposed to be the 350,000 additional from their school choice and circuit breaker was supposed to be directed to BMS. And again, were there other things that they came up and other expenses that they were used for? Again, those are questions we'll try and get answered.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Scott, very much so. And as you put out on the expense line, without getting into anybody's personal information, there's a whole lot more detail that could be helpful, including whether contract salaries include benefits, all of those questions that you were asking earlier about the expense lines. But, you know, frankly, I was disappointed that we saw nothing on revenue and we saw expense lines. And to the question put forward on May 10th by our select board member, Chris Keefe, we need to see the level services budget for the previous year. What is that?
Exactly.
And, you know, we have parents afraid that teachers and programs are going to be cut. And that's why the level services is so important. It is, what have we been funding and what is it going to cost us to fund it again the next year? In other words, nobody's taken anything away. What is that? What does that look like?
I think that's where the Bridges program also gets kind of confusing,
Yes.
because it wasn't part of the budget that was presented. It got added in afterwards, and then it's now an expected service going forward.
Exactly. That was my point at town meeting.
Mhm.
You know, presenting the budget was the fact that, you know, at town meeting a year ago, nobody from the town voted with the expectation that they were going to be adding additional positions and additional ongoing operating expenses with that money. And as much as they then presented the budget this year, which they said obviously did not add anything, you know, new employees to BMS, or that for this coming year, the point is that between what was said last year and this year, something that happened in between that changed that, where it was truly, though, because you can't say last year's town meeting, no new things are being added. This year's town meeting, no new things being added, but in between there, no, 3 full-time employees and a major program was created. And it wasn't created from some unknown grant that came in unexpected from the state. It was created from the funds that were voted at town meeting last year.
But hang on, Scott, we don't actually know, because we have no visibility into the fiscal 23 to fiscal 24 changes in the school budget. We were not, despite asking for that information last year, we were not given that information. So we don't know whether there was other funding available in the budget to pay for the Bridges program that the school committee voted for in June of 2023. There might have been other funding available. Does that make sense?
Yes, correct.
Right,
I mean,
and
it is
but-
the lack of transparency we have for the.
Yeah, and going back to what is the baseline fiscal 24 operational budget that the town of Berlin voted and approved in May of 2023? And that number is not the number that the school committee is using. And the facts are what the facts are. We can't deal with imaginary numbers.
Well, yes, I mean, that's quite clear. I mean, you can see the public is getting aware of that also, that the numbers are significantly lacking.
I
So-
think that's another problem going into this special election is I know we're asking these questions and we look at the budgets and we've looked at the school budgets over a few years now. You have many people now going in with these questions who have nothing to start with. And it's kind
Yes.
of, the onus is kind of now unfortunately on the school district to explain this to a lot more people besides us.
Right. Yeah, and that's what, I mean, we'll try and get these answers, and of course, we're on a very short time frame to get those answers. And if there is anybody, I mean, again, I keep hearing the savings. Please forward that map and details to the FinCom email address,
Mhm.
because anybody that's talking about that, please show us. I'm gonna try and get those numbers tomorrow, but if somebody actually has run the numbers and is putting that information out there, please email it to us, and then I will look at that. So that's the other piece that wanted to, we'll be trying to get that information from the schools, and of course, we are in those very tight schedule for this.
I have another question, because this was something that had been mentioned last year, I think, when they talked to us, that they were gonna go after more grants. And it would be really great to know if they have been applying for grants. Or, I mean, basically, it seems to be another aspect of what the school district should be doing, and
Yeah, I'm not sure what, I mean, you do see some things mentioned about grants
mhm,
in their budget. But again, it looks like it just repeats the same grant reference from one year to the next. If you go and look at last year's, but
mhm.
where is what page is it? There is on page 16, they list a 240 grant, a 262 grant, a Title II-A grant, a Title I grant, so a total of 4 grants. Mostly I mean, they're very small numbers, like the 262 grant, 5,000 to BMS, 5,000 to BES, 0 to Tohoto. The Title II-A grant, 5,000 also to BMS and BES, 0 to Tohoto. The Title I grant, 10,000 to BMS and BES each, and 0 to Tohoto. And the 240 grant, wherever that is, 52,000 BMS, 45,000 to BES, and 160,000 to Tohoto. But I think if you go and look at the previous years, and I have the draft version, you look at their FY24 grant, it's the exact same 4 grants, 240, 262, Title II-A, Title I. And the difference is a little bit went to Tohoto in those the previous year,
Mhm.
and not much difference overall in the numbers. But that's the extent of anything showing on grants to the budget.
Thank you.
Julia, a comment on grant, and it's the comment that you've made with regard to CPA projects. Grant money and certain funds funds that are designated in a successful grant proposal are for a project. They don't fund ongoing operational expenses, and it's irresponsible to hire new people, to bring in new employees when you haven't secured operational funding for those salaries and for the cost of those employees, for their compensation. So, and you don't do that with grant money typically. I don't know of grants that open-endedly fund employees. I might be funded for the time period of a project, a year or two, but that's not what's been done here,
Mhm.
as I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, that's been always the problem with grants is in fact, the state oftentimes, or even the federal government dangles the grant out there to get
Get things
something
started.
new started, and then hoping people will just like it, and then they'll drop it, and then you're responsible for the ongoing expenses, or else you have to get rid of something you've gotten used to having. But yes, that is a big problem with the grants and also the budgeting, make sure that, you know, you're bringing in something and are you really going to want on that, the operating expense going forward?
Mhm.
All right, so I want to move to the next piece is I had discussion with Kristen today, and I also want to hear other people's comments too. I mean, we're now, you know, we've had our town meeting and obviously we know we're somewheres between, and we're, I'm gonna use just the amount of money coming from the levy, the 2.5 and 7.5. Obviously, the voters are fine or approved that were overall the budget as is, that was approved at town meeting, which would increase the levy 2.5%. Obviously, we're not impressed to do it at 7.5%. And after the, you know, schools meeting, they have stuck at their 7.5% still. That the cuts that they made, which to the HVAC system at BMS will come from free cash and not from the operating, but excuse me, from the levy. So have some thoughts. Say I've had a discussion with Carol. We'll have more discussion on this. And like I said, my idea of like see what kind of savings and excess funds they have, and can we, you know, can we get something towards $150,000 from their side that they could then, like say, use school choice, use excess and deficiency, roll it over to replenish the school choice the
Mhm.
following year, and have them, their budget, you know, on paper, you know, what we need to get from the levy, reduce it by a point to 6.5%. The other thoughts on that side was what can we do on our side of the budget? And one of the ones that in terms of a bigger number that we could look at and find is on our own revenue side. One area, people had the warrant from town meeting, be looking at page 23 under other revenue sources, and that's the Public Safety Special Stabilization Fund. In FY 24, we used $262,297 to the budget, so 262,000. That went down to 146,000 this year. Last year, we had increased it to being the 3 lowest paid police officers on the budget.
Right.
That was an increase from the normal 2 lowest paid police officers. In FY 25 budget, the one was approved at town meeting, made that only the 2 lowest paid police officers, which was $146,000. 146,264, so 146K, so a decrease of $116,000. Also, we know that, you know, again, some of these numbers come in late, that we did get replenished with the Highland Commons. Funds came in with over 700,000, so we have that.
Sorry, Scott. Scott, you're going through, hang on, Scott, you're going through a lot of numbers. I don't know what you're talking about. Could you like put the baseline out? What are you talking about?
So
here?
in the, so I don't know, do you have to have the warrant in front of you? Or
Yeah, Kristen emailed it over, so it just has,
not
I
this
can-
coming warrant. but
oh,
the
okay,
one
the
from
last
past.
warrant. Yeah,
Yeah.
so but where are you going with this line of conversation? I have the warrant that,
Okay,
you know, from
so-
town meeting, but where are you taking us? What are you suggesting?
So one of the areas that we, basically tapped into the levy, getting the funds. So on, is it up there now?
Page
So if
23.
you scroll, yes,
Oops, I was trying to highlight just that. There we go.
it's near the bottom right here. So this is revenue that we have added to our budget from the Public Safety Special Stabilization Fund. So last year in FY 24, we funded it or used funds to offset the 3 lowest paid police officer positions. So it was 263K.
Right. And we,
This
just if I can make
year-
a quick comment
yeah.
on that, the reason that those are lower even more this year is because we have several other higher paid officers that left, and then we had 2 new academy recruits that came in. So that further reduced that amount that we needed to put in this year.
So, right, so as a result, we dropped it down to being the 2 lowest paid officers. And of course, as Kristen pointed out, because of some other, changes with changeover, the salaries also changed. So you see a decrease of $116,000. So as a result, that 116,000 is coming from the levy the, the 2.5% that we've gone up on the levy amount. So one of the thoughts here is, do we look to, move this up to the same amount as last year, 116,000, and we start getting closer to knocking off a point of the tax increase it would be. So we'd be using the public safety mitigation funds at the same level as we did last year, which would free up would basically reduce that from the levy, and then that additional 116,000 would be taken up with the schools on the levy.
So let me see if I understand this line of conversation. We're looking to reach into some reserves we have so that the school has this this imaginary number, that they get their imaginary number. Is that what you're talking about doing?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I appreciate your efforts.
So, and that would be, and one of the things, like I said, I've kind of used that and try to use increments of 75,000, because every 75,000 would be a 0.5 change in the levy. So if we could get to 150,000 right there, if we went to the same number, it's 116,000. And any other, you're looking at like a $34,000 difference. If there's some other ways we could tweak things, then we don't want to open up the entire budget to, because if you were looking only at $34,000 to adjust things, you could do 5,000 here, here, there, and come up with a number. But we also don't want to be opening up the whole budget for that. But I've been looking at what we can do is move 150,000 from that way, and then we start coming in closer. I mean, we're basically 5 points separation, right, between their 7.5, our 2.5, and that alone would bring us into 3 point separation.
Right, Scott. I think we're chasing something that we're not going to get. And I'm not in favor of chasing it. I don't know what, Kristen, I'll ask you and maybe June, the question of what we have the ability to do with our budget as the town approved after the special town meeting. So if we're looking to lessen impact on scenario, hypothetical, the school committee gets this budget that impacts the town with a roughly 7.5% tax levy. Do we have the freedom to do the kind of thing after the special town meeting so that we can smooth out a bit this tax increase? Or is that something that has to be voted again by the town meeting? Or what's the process for doing this kind of adjustment in revenue sources?
I would assume that would be an article to basically add 116,000 from the Public Safety Special Stabilization Fund.
We would actually have to revote that section.
You
Right.
vote the whole section.
All of our budgets have been.
Guys,
voted.
I can't hear you, and June, I think
Sorry,
had the
you-
answer, but I didn't hear it.
Sorry about that. You would actually have to revote that section of the budget. We would have to redo the public safety section. Because we would be raising and appropriating less and transferring or appropriating from the special public safety stabilization fund.
So it has to go back to town meeting to do that kind of change.
Yes. Yeah, we can't just do that.
Okay. So I really think we ought to let this school question go to a special town meeting and not do these other things. Again, I appreciate everybody's efforts. I know it's done in the spirit of cooperation, but
Yeah, well, I mean, we still need to do some effort. I mean, if the school committee wants to take a hard stand on their side, I mean, we just have to expose that to the public. I mean, there are elections in November, but if they have anything in good faith, especially, I mean, I know trust is significantly broken as it is. And I'll work with the administration, but try and come up with something that we can start coming together on this. Because,
Yeah,
you know,
Scott.
and that's what the public wants to see. I don't want to be the finance committee that's gonna stick in on one side and the school committee on the other side. And basically it comes up with, we either have big winners and big losers. We need to try and find something in the middle.
But Scott, what we were just discussing, that was why we wanted to talk to them in February.
And
Because
I
if we could-
completely
this
agree.
is the exact sort of discussion.
Right.
If the school committee could have come with us with a workable budget and talked to us, we could have started looking at how we were appropriating or proposing to appropriate funds
Right.
and make these adjustments.
I completely agree. I mean, I do not disagree with that. That's, I mean, what we've seen is clearly, I mean, they felt that they could just push it through town meeting and did not have to negotiate with us. And obviously they were proven wrong. And the thing here is, though, we don't want to just move this into, I mean, I know voters probably gonna be upset that, you know, ones that voted against this, because it came down to, you voted against this, and now they get to come back and do it again.
Mhm.
If it passes, I mean, they're gonna be looking, going, well, why can't we have another vote to see if we unpass it? Right? I mean, this is not, you know, the process is not exactly fairly set up for people that are opposed. I mean, there's definitely not a fair process for that. The fairest thing is if we had just moved forward and they were against it, they are in writing about not, wanting to go to a paper ballot. This could already be set on the agenda. It could have been done before June 15th, and we'd be going to a paper ballot, and everybody that said they didn't know about this meeting, if they didn't know about when they had, they could be doing early voting and stuff like that, that would have gotten a big participation. But unfortunately, that also did not happen. And
We also attended the link meeting where they did not
Yeah.
understand the process. They basically had said if you had voted for the paper ballot, we wouldn't have the election till November.
correct,
Which-
there was
Which was
misinformation.
unfortunate, but it meant that people going in who had never participated in town meeting and didn't understand how the process worked didn't really know whether or not to vote for the alternative amendment.
Yeah, I mean, there was plenty of misinformation, bad communication, particularly, I mean, schools, shot themselves in the foot as much as they possibly could on this. So I think to me, it still comes down to try and come up with something in the middle ground. And so, I mean, in my particular case here, again, I understand Mary going, it's like, we still don't have numbers. And we have to have a decision by whatever time, maybe we have to have it to the printers by 5 o'clock or something next Wednesday,
It's Wednesday. yeah.
right?
Well, I'm comfortable though with doing what we had done for the town meeting and saying like, they keep things moving along because they really they need that information as well, that they said that if we have to meet after the warrant goes to the printer to finally make our decision and just not have it printed.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
I'm-
there's nothing prevents us from continuing discussing on this.
But
And we also need to see movement from the school side.
But I don't feel comfortable saying anything without all the numbers we've been asking for. And the thing is that I've been saying before is, at this point, it's not really just FinCom. Now there are a lot of other people who are asking the same questions that we have been asking for several months. And so in a way, it doesn't matter what we do, say, no, we found this extra money. If we can't see those numbers clearly explained, because it's not just going to be, the few members of the select board and the FinCom and capital. It's going to be everyone in town who has these questions. And again, it's back on the school committee to really be clear about this.
I agree. I mean, it's not like we're going to, vote on any of this stuff tonight. And, and whether it's something that we make that, we make our own concessions on that. I mean, it's good. Everything's got to be dependent also on the school committee are working on this. Again, if they just do not want to work with us, and clearly Carol wants to work with us. So, if they want to ignore Carol, if they want to ignore us and think that, again, they can just push the Tohoto parents now to push this through, no, there's nothing that we can do about that, right?
So
It's a
Scott,
void, Yep.
Yeah, sorry, but, Carol needs to marshal the numbers and get them to us ASAP. And this
Exactly.
is not a new request. My goodness, this goes back to last fall. And Chris Keefe asked in the May 10 meeting with the school committee, was Carol present for those numbers, those level service numbers? And I don't know what Carol needs to do to marshal the numbers, but she needs to put them together and get them to us for us to help her. But I can tell you right now, there's that old thing about fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. We had an agreement breached. We had an agreement last year. It's been breached. It has to do with what was the fiscal 24 budget voted on at town meeting. And I'm going to keep going back to that. That's got to be resolved. And I know what my recommendation would be as a FinCom member today, and I can tell you it's not going to change until it's not going to change. So I know everybody's trying. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Scott. But it isn't going to work. To echo what Julie said, if we have all the numbers and we have a clear view of this thing, I might be willing to talk to the recommendations, the efforts that Kristen's made and you're making, Scott, to try to find some middle ground, but I'm not optimistic. I'm really not optimistic. And I'm frankly tired of the disrespect and what's been going on in this process. My time is valuable. I don't need to be doing this.
Yes, I agree. This is not something we should be having to continue past the town meeting to cover on this.
It's frankly absurd that you can't give us a little Excel chart that has revenue and expenses. What is so hard? Assabet does it every year. 7 towns. Come on. What is so hard? Why? Why hasn't this happened for 2 years?
Right, and I guess, and then the next question is, why is the school committee creating programs that clearly they don't have the understanding of what the financial impact is? Because again, if anybody out there from the school committee says it's saving the money, send us the email with the explanation of how those numbers are broken down. And I'm not expecting to get that email because they clearly have not done that. And so yes, there is a lot of mistakes here, and yes, it's a lot of money, and people don't want to have to expend this type of money based on such foggy and obscure numbers.
I wanted to point out, if I may, there's also an issue that June found with the numbers that were given to us on Friday, the whatever last Friday was, that 1-page budget doesn't match up with the assessment letter that we were given.
So if you look at either of them, but
Yeah.
the FY 24 budget that they have listed here, I'm not too sure what the 5,283,000 actually is coming out to, because if we take what we actually gave them as far as the budget goes, with the 3,924,434 plus the free cash that we gave them for the one time of the 382,715, on top of the 350,000 of school choice that they agreed to, that's only coming up to 4,657,149. And even that has, I think, the capital already in it.
That's where I
It's
think
not
we're
coming
missing.
out. Something,
Yeah.
there's a different number floating around.
Right.
Because I think we're missing their revenues. This is, I think there's potentially more school choice, circuit breaker.
That maybe they use
That were,
or
right, but without the complete picture, we don't know. So it just looks like it's off.
and I don't think this is the budget per se that we voted on.
Right, this
Um,
is just the expense.
No.
Or this
No.
matches what they have from this side again.
Right, but it's
from
not,
his own.
it's not what we voted on. That's what this here.
Yeah.
Right, so,
It's not what we actually voted on, so when they're putting up this FY 25 budget, and they're showing a cut in the budget from what they actually got last year, this is not quite what we're seeing, because based on the letter that they sent us, based on what their proposed budget was, or their voted on budget on May 13th, which was after the town meeting, the actual assessment letter came out to a total of 4,651,238, which based on their letter is different than what they're asking for here on this one that they presented that had a line item budget, has additional expenses in it. So it's not actually showing officially what is actually being requested from the town, and they must either be using other revenues, whether it be grant, school choice, whatever. So it's not actually an accurate comparison, because if it was, I mean, it's off by what, 741,000 versus what we actually voted. So I don't know where that
Well,
was. I
June-
did ask just to see if we could clarify that, because it helps if we're actually looking at real numbers that we voted versus.
June, welcome to my world. This is what it's been like for 2+ years.
I know, I've been
Okay.
here with you.
So let me ask the people here, and I'm gonna try to be better behaved. Let me ask the people here, how do we get an audit of the finances of the district?
I do believe they get an audit every year.
In fact,
Yes.
they presented one at their budget meeting. It's like, that was like the first thing.
Yeah, we were at
that
one.
of the-
Yes, unfortunately, I missed part of it because the budget stuff was supposed to be at 5:30 that night, and I got there for the 5:30 and they started with the audit. And then never got to the budget till 2 hours later.
Mhm.
But there was, yes, they did have, I don't think I got any paper or.
I don't think, I think they just
Sent
did a
out.
presentation. I
I
got,
don't know if it's on their website.
I got the
maybe.
impression that a lot of the stuff was emailed out to the committee members. But there wasn't anything for any attendees to. look
So,
at.
is this a state audit? Who does the audit that you're talking about, Julie? And is it possible? And is this a situation where you need a forensic audit? I mean, it's really alarming that the discrepancies in numbers, and it's not new. It's been going on.
I mean, they very well could be accurate numbers, but I don't think they're being documented with the detail on it for us to be able to pull it out of it, to be able to say, this is for, like I said, school choice funds, or there was another one too, circuit breaker, I think
Yes.
was another one that they could use if they wanted to. But again, at the end of it, they don't have to use those special revenue funds.
Right.
Once it's voted on, they can kind of do what they see fit.
Well, yes, June, there's a lot of discretion there. I understand that. But these are public monies. Come on.
We have a member of the audience that wants to speak. Scott, if you,
Sure,
Lynn Ryan.
yeah, bring on Lynn.
Lynn, if you want to unmute yourself.
Has she been promoted?
I put her up there. She can speak, but she's muted. Lynn, can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
I just wanted to clarify, having been in the regional school business for quite a long time. Regional schools are required by state law to have an audit done every year. The audit is then presented to the school committee. And within 10 days of presenting it to the school committee, it's required to be sent to every municipality that belongs to the district. So you must have a copy of it.
How quickly after the school committee gets it, do the towns have to have it?
The law says 10 days.
10 days from the audit to the school committee, 10 days from the school committee to the towns, which,
The 10 days from the time the school committee receives it in open session.
And Lynn, who specifically is responsible to do that? Is that the superintendent, the chair of the school committee?
I always feel that everything stops with the superintendent.
Okay,
Vaguely remember seeing something about an audit, but.
It
So
should
that
have been
was-
sent, it says to the selectman, the town administrator, mayor, it lists the folks that it should be sent to. So it should have been sent to either the select board or the town administrator.
So that was presented the last Wednesday in February, wherever that date was. So it would have been from that day to the next 10 days, so actually it's kind of a range.
This was when Cheryl, I think was here.
I have no record of receiving an audit for the last 2 years at least since I've been here.
Well, maybe that's a question you could ask.
Yep.
If you want, I don't have it at my fingertips, but I can send you the MGL on it.
Lynn, is that audit typically done by somebody in the state education department, or is it from?
No, it has to
private?
be, it has to be an independent auditor. It
Uh-huh.
can't be done by the school. It has to be done by an independent auditor.
Okay,
And they did have it done. I know that for a fact because that was the party that presented it at the school committee meeting. That was their auditor, just like how we had at the select board meeting Monday night, we had our auditor. We have to do the same thing with an outside agency every year.
When did you say it was?
And you may find that they sent it, but you don't, it would be well to just ask the question and even ask them to send you another copy.
Sure.
The other thing I ask for is the management letter.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't usually have to come as part of the audit.
That's a very good point because the management letter will list any findings or even just what they call recommendations. So a lot of times, and the audit was clean. I was there for that presentation. There were no findings, but there are often recommendations on policies or procedures that you can implement. So those are important to look at as well.
I always call it their justification for existence as far as the auditors go. Because if they give you a clean audit, they have to say something or they haven't proved their worth.
Very true.
Very true. Mhm.
Okay, that's it.
All right,
thank you, Lynn.
thank you.
Remind her to put her hand down so she wants to speak again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can lower her
Yes,
hand.
she-
I didn't
oh,
know I had that
oh,
power.
you-
Okay.
If she wants to come back in.
Perfect.
All right, so I think, it comes down to I'm gonna have the meeting with Carol and the finance person tomorrow. And just, anything, I know you've emailed me information here. If there's anything else you want me to bring up questions there, just let me know. I don't know if there's other things you want to discuss here on that. I understand, Mary, you think it's a waste of time. But,
No, Scott, it isn't a waste of time. That's not my point. It's important to have these conversations. It's important to have them in the public.
Mhm.
So it's clearly not a waste of time. I'm just frustrated. And in terms of the timing of this particular meeting, I assume it's about getting the warrant out. And does FinCom have a recommendation to go with the warrant? Am I right?
Well, part of it was that hopefully we will had more information, and also see what that information is that we will have collected. So that was the point of this meeting. And likewise, unfortunately, Carol couldn't attend tonight. Julie couldn't either. So, no,
So should we
We-
go
we have
ahead
some-
and schedule for next Wednesday?
I'd
So
say
that-
we put on the plate for next Wednesday, or do we want to do a Tuesday just because I have no hope that we're gonna do any type of vote for next week.
Okay.
It would matter for the thing, so I think Wednesday would be fine.
Okay,
You have another person who would like to speak in the audience, Chris Keefe.
Yes, bring in Chris.
Oops. Hold on, where'd she go?
Did you?
What did I
bring her
do?
forward?
I see her up there.
Where is she? Hold on, I clicked something and now I can't see her. There we go. Okay, Chris, you just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. Scott, I have already told this to Kristen. I think it doesn't hurt to have another set of ears at this meeting tomorrow, regardless of what Carol or anyone else has said. I think it would be important for Kristen to be there tomorrow.
Okay, yes, and I know Kristen, you, as I was walking here.
Yeah,
Yes.
just reaching out, yeah.
Yes.
And I know I'm only one select board member, so, take it as you will.
Okay,
But, I think it's good to have a couple sets of ears.
yeah, I have no objection to another person. I mean, Carol invited me, so I wanted to make sure that, and Kristen did reach out to Carol.
And I
Okay.
did receive some clarification too, that from Carol, that she wanted to go look at the line item budget line by line, but not, obviously you're not making any decisions. It's more just, it's just informational. So I think, obviously it's great to have the information and have those discussions, but any information that we can bring back here into the select board can hopefully inform the process and see if we can get them to continue to ask to provide that information that we keep asking for, dating back to the November 3rd letter, Chris, that you and Scott jointly sent to the schools, which requested pretty much all of this information from the very beginning. So we
And I
continue
did-
to try for it.
And I did ask for those three things at that Friday meeting. And I gave Carol a slip of paper that had all three things listed, so she couldn't forget. And one of them was, of course, the level services budget again.
And
So,
she did, when she sent over the information on Friday, she said they were working to get us that information. I have not received it yet, but she did say that they were working on it.
So-
okey-doke.
A question, Chris Keefe, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. When you say level services budget for fiscal 24, it would be the services that were available in fiscal 23. If we were to do them in fiscal 24, what would they cost? Is that correct?
No,
I wasn't specific. I believe it could have been a level services budget for this year, for FY 25.
Well, I think we need it for the previous year. And I just want to make sure that my understanding that you and I spoke the same language. And I think we need to know what the
Wouldn't hurt to
the
get,
2 years, the 2
Yeah.
years. We need the 2 years.
yes, and I've been told by a previous school committee member who's left that you should really be looking back even further than that.
Well, no argument from me, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
I especially agree with that, to try to understand this Bridges program and whether there's savings. I think they need to go back at least 5 years and look at the
Mhm.
trends of things to understand. And in fact, this should have all been done, and they should be able just to pass it on to us when they voted on this in June of last year, because that was, I don't know. There's no words to describe it, to make a decision like that if they didn't have the financial numbers to back it up.
Well, when you get money, free cash to pay for special education students out of district tuitions, and then don't spend it on that and spend it on something else, that's very dishonest. So I do have a problem with transparency that we are not getting.
Yes, there's no disagreement with that, and I know in the public, what's been going out, there's no disagreement also on the lack of transparency from the schools. And that's a big reason why we're in this predicament. So.
Yes. Agreed.
And the problem right now is if anybody goes to vote on this, it has nothing to do with us. So there's no information for anybody who wants to vote on this number.
Exactly, and that's the thing that bothers me the most is sitting here and you're basically, at the moment, you're going forward and looking at just the same exact scenario that we had with the same exact numbers that we had at town meeting, which is them coming back with the same operating budget numbers. And there's nothing realistic for us to work from on the finance committee side. And the public is just being put into the position of just trust us when they've already demonstrated a lack of trust. And just trust us that the numbers are right and we really need this funding and it will go for what you said it would go for. And that's a bad scenario to have for a special town meeting or town meeting.
Well, I think that it is very important that if the school committee wants to get this passed, that they are going to be the ones who have to put out information, not only to us, but to the voters.
Yes, I mean, I hope that anybody that's listening here from the, like more on the school side will be pushing the schools to demonstrate what the savings are and give some numbers on this Bridges program and how that works out with the special education. Now district tuition's not going out, but yet not getting them reimbursed by the state or getting a partial reimbursement, and how these numbers work out. I mean, more people, I think, push them for showing us what you say is true. Just demonstrate to us it is true. And that's what I'm going to be pushing for. One of the many items I'll be pushing for tomorrow.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
I might need a lot of it.
Bye, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Welcome.
I don't think we have any other meeting items. We got our meeting set up for next week. You're good with that next Wednesday, right?
Oh,
Mary?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if you can,
You can
Yeah.
come to the mic, please.
Heidi Petard, Derby Road. There's just a couple things that I would like to state so that the people out there know that taxpayers, parents, the community is paying attention to all of this. So trying to just kind of sneak it in. There was something, I attended the Board of Selectmen meeting Monday, and there was something that came up and I was kind of like, oh yeah, they did used to do that. In the town report, they actually used to list all the teachers. And I specifically paid attention to Berlin Memorial, not necessarily to Tohoto. It may have been in there for Tohoto too. But there used to be a list in the town report that listed the names and the positions of the teachers, Mrs. Smith, first grade, Mr. Jones, third grade. I think that would help very much in understanding some of these numbers that we were provided. Like, how many teachers does this salary mean? How many therapists? How many paraprofessionals?
Heidi, this is a question we actually did ask, and the current school committee thinks that that is confidential information. That's what they have told us.
Well,
Now,
then Berlin has been breaking confidential information for the
if you
previous
look at our
30
town
years.
report, everybody else who is still directly on the town payroll,
Mhm.
their names and salaries and their
Yeah.
position are still in the town report. So that is a question for Carol, I think.
Yeah.
When you talk to her about at what level can we actually get this information?
Well, yeah,
Well-
I know that information, at least from public employees, has always been.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for the individual teacher's salary.
Mhm.
I'm just
That
asking
actually
to
is
know.
public information too, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I mean, it was just kind of nice to see, like, okay, who is in the school that my children are attending?
Mhm.
I may know their classroom teachers and their gym teacher, but I don't know every single body that's in that school.
Mhm.
So it would be nice to kind of see that listed out so that we know, like I said, how many teachers, how many therapists, how many paraprofessionals? Because I think that will help us make an educated choice. Kind of looking at the numbers. Okay, we have 220 something enrolled students. I'm just pulling a number out. Do we really need 5 physical therapists for that number of students? I understand the classroom teachers are a clear-cut number, but I think it will help us rather than seeing a lump sum and trying to figure out, well, who's making that salary? Is that one person making that salary or is that 10 people making that salary?
Yes, I agree. I mean, another area we see it even without the salaries next to it. I mean, the town report, you see the names of all the regular police officers.
Mhm.
I forget the exact names. You got the regular police and what's the other one?
Special.
Special police. Likewise, you see it with fire.
Yeah.
You can see the names and you can count the people. And nobody can count the people here at the schools.
And it's like this is where this distrust is coming in now. It's like, what is with all this secrecy all of a sudden? Why is everything all of a sudden top secret, no longer public info, like you said, it is public information, but we shouldn't have to go dig for it ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
It should be front and center for us taxpayers to know where our hard-earned dollars are going towards.
Yeah, and that's not a unreasonable request at all.
Yeah.
In fact, I think one of the things that was striking to me that I know, I mean, I don't pay attention to social media, but people send me stuff. And one of the things that people criticized on the finance committee about, what we approved for increase at BMS. And then saying, well, they have 3% increases in their personnel costs and all that type of stuff. How can they even get by with, what was the increase? I think it's like $99,000, was it? I think for BMS.
Yeah.
And I mean, the total increases from salaries from the union contracts was 76,500. So we covered that. But it was one of those things that you started, but nobody knew what the numbers are. So they start speculating, making judgment decisions on all this stuff. And then you finally get what the numbers are, and then you realize, oh, that was incorrect. I mean, we did fund that, but I mean, at the same time, we didn't know what we were funding because we're like everybody else here going, I mean, we're if anything, we're not the audit, but we are the ones that are, making sure that the dollars are spent wisely, and the schools are not done anything to
This
deficit.
here was the first time though that we had seen
Yeah.
anything that was like itemized.
Exactly, that we
Yeah,
have
this one
not
here is
seen
the
it
first one.
And I have found
to this degree.
for I've lived in Berlin for many years now, and I have always found that extremely shameful that Assabet Valley can pull this together year after year for us to look at. I know a lot of families, because they're not involved with Assabet, don't even pick this up and don't even look at it, unfortunately. But if a seven district school can pull this
But they
together,
can tell you down to the student for each
Yes.
town.
yes,
Yeah.
The programs they're
Exactly.
in, where they're going after they've finished.
exactly.
Okay. And at the request of the FinCom last year, I actually had an electronic copy of the presentation that Assabet gave to the FinCom, and I sent it to the school administration and said, can you do something similar to this?
Yep.
So we've been trying to ask all of the right questions.
And I know from firsthand, from my husband is an Assabet grad, my 3 children are Assabet students. They're dealing with a heck of a lot more socioeconomic, diverse cultures and languages and learning disabilities than our school district is dealing with.
Mhm.
So get it together.
I think one of the other things as an aside that has also come up, it's because Tohoto is a regional, Boylston isn't part of Assabet.
Correct.
So also in these discussions, they tend to treat Berlin students who don't go to Tohoto as being lost to another school, like St. John's or Assabet.
Okay.
But from the Berlin side, we're like, they're both our schools.
Mhm.
So whether a Berlin student decides to go to Assabet or go to Tohoto, we're not losing them from one school to the other.
Right.
They're
They view
still
it as
in
a-
our district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's
And I-
viewed as a competitor, I think, by,
And I think that also is causing a little bit of, I'm only seeing at the upper level for some things that have been said, a little bit confusing about what Tohoto has to provide. Because it's different for a Boylston student at Tohoto
Mhm.
than it is for a Berlin student who does have an easier option of if they want a more technical
Well,
training.
exactly.
They can easily choose Assabet over a Boylston student who has to go into, like, I guess it's a lottery system now.
Right, and it's even
Well, no,
worse now.
not even.
It's even worse now because
Yeah.
changes.
Assabet's accommodating only their in-district students now
Yep.
because the demand has become so high.
Yes, there's nothing left over. So
Oh, I
a Boylston
forgot to hit that
student
this
or
year.
any other
Wow.
town, so there was 0 Boylston that went in, I think there's 0 that went into this past freshman class of any particular town, let alone Boylston.
So, and then, I mean, some of these are just, comments or observations that I've made that, again, I would like to make the school committee aware that these are, yes, I can't speak for other people, but I have been speaking with other people. That's resubmitting the budget as revised by removing that 400,000 HVAC amount it's almost insulting. It's insulting. Don't sell it as, oh, we just saved you $400,000 because you did not. The only reason that $400,000 got removed is because you were called to the table on it, that you did not have the right quotes, you did not have the right documentation. The Bridges program, which obviously is front and center, the funding of it is coming up. If you did not take the money that was meant for that other purpose, where was that money coming from? Is it this buy now, pay later kind of theory that seems to be out there? Like, I want an answer as to, if you did not use that funding, where was your initial funding coming from when you took that June 2023 vote at your school committee meeting? And when we're trying to figure out like revenue and expenses and where revenue gets distributed, who should be actively and accurately tracking this? Like, I mean, I know it's not as simple as a checkbook book register, but why is this so much chasing all these facts and figures? Why is there not a database, a spreadsheet, something where these numbers and these answers can just come from? It just seems like we're chasing things and we're just being told, no, 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 it's not there. I don't know how to get it. No, we can't provide that to you because of, some, I don't know, privacy reason, or just because the school committee, in my opinion, is being so difficult and so careless with our tax dollars. I feel like I'm dealing with some kind of shady used car salesperson. It's just a lot of fast talking and a lot of non-answers. I want to reiterate something that was said at the very end of the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday night. The fear mongering and the distribution of inaccurate and incomplete information needs to stop. This needs to be a vote based on fair and accurate information. And it's very sad to me that a BMS parental group that I volunteered many, many hours with when my children were in that school has suddenly become a politically driven group versus a group that was originally created to kind of bring together all the parental volunteers into one cohesive group and distribute what we did as volunteers. For instance, the book fairs that were put on twice a year, the teacher appreciation luncheon. And finally, I would just like to say that the BMS community and the greater Berlin community deserve better than this. They deserve information allowing them to make a decision that is best for themselves and their families based on accurate, sound information, not information intended to instill fear that our school system is on the verge of collapse. Thank you.
You do have someone online that wants to speak as well.
Okay. We can't read the name from here.
Looks like Melissa, if you can unmute yourself, you are up for speaking.
Hi, I'm Melissa Broder, South Street. I wish that somebody from the school committee could have been there. I understand people had, prior obligations, but I just feel like it's unfair that there's really been no defense on their side. And I think this last person who spoke saying that the fear mongering needs to end when she just continued to do that is kind of ridiculous. I think comparing people that take care of our children and have their best interests in mind, and yes, I agree there needs to be more transparency, but to compare them to a used car salesman and then turn around and say, let's stop the fear mongering. I mean, it's just disrespectful. And I really hope that all the teachers and administrators know that people don't look at you that way. And I just hope everybody keeps in mind what we're trying to do here. This shouldn't be some big divide, like we're all fighting against each other. And this is just disturbing to watch, honestly. And I wish people would stick to the facts. There's been a lot of ways where people are trying to say things and sway people in really negative ways. And it's just really frustrating to watch this. And it is concerning that our school could lose all of these programs. And people keep saying it like all of us need to stop complaining about it and whatever, but it is a big deal. And I understand where people are concerned on the other side. I don't want my taxes to go up either, but I also don't want my kids' school to lose accreditation or for them to lose half their education, and then people move out of town because the school is no longer accredited, and then property taxes tank, et cetera. So I just wish people would stick to what's actually supposed to be being talked about instead of trying to write these stories about all these things that have happened in the past. I think there was miscommunications on both sides, and I just hope people can come together and actually get through this. So I don't know. I appreciate everybody taking their time to get informed. And I also don't really like the comment about the PTO being politically driven. I think they were just trying to inform people because people didn't know. And yeah, people get a warrant in the mail, but not everybody can read that or does read that. And I think, it's a big deal. And they're not trying to do anything conniving by informing people. They didn't get up there and say, this is how you need to vote. They said, this is what's going on. If this is important to you, please come to the meeting and tell your friends. We're writing stories about people, and it's not fair when they're not there to defend themselves either. So anyways, thank you all for your time. I hope we can stick to the facts and not be completely divided as a town as we get through this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Through Scott, can I talk to Melissa a bit?
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Melissa, I want you to know I'm a member of the Finance Committee. I see myself as a citizen. I think this is really critical in the town. I'm a passionate supporter of public education. I want you to know, Melissa, in our little district, these two little towns, that we've been in the top 20%, top quarter, top third of all the states, of all the Massachusetts school districts. Number 1 in performance ranking, number 2 in funding. And the previous speaker, the citizen who spoke just now, was speaking about the school committee. She wasn't talking about the teachers. She wasn't talking about the educators. She was talking about the school committee. And Melissa, I need to tell you, somebody forwarded to me a link communication that went out recently, and it has errors of fact in it about the numbers. I'm sorry to tell you that, but there is inaccurate information being given to parents. And it really troubles me because I want the parents in our towns to understand that we have really good schools. The town supports them. And I'm puzzled why the school committee takes the position it does. Because people in this town we have we're talking decades of history of strong support for our public schools. And we're in no way near the danger of any kind of certification problem. That is simply not true. And this information is available online if you want to get educated. It's all out there. So I'm really sorry that parents, and I assume you're a parent, maybe I shouldn't make that assumption, but that parents have become afraid for their children's well-being and education. I don't think there's cause for that fear. And I've worked very hard to make sure that we do the right things for everybody in town, and it's important for people to understand that this is a matter of public debate. It's a matter of compromise. It's a matter of negotiations. And that's what the Finance Committee has been asking for.
Melissa, I didn't mean to demote you. Did you still want to talk? I saw your hand was still up and I didn't know if that was from before, or if you wanted to say something else. So if you leave your hand up, I'll open it back up to you if that's okay with you, Scott.
Sure.
I mean, I guess just in response to that, like, I didn't know that those numbers were wrong. People are human and they make mistakes. Obviously, I don't think there was an intention for them to be putting out wrong information like that. But whatever the case, to say that this is just a compromise is kind of the understatement of the year, because kids losing art and music and sports and tutors and recess monitors and all these things, that is not a compromise. That is like half of their education. So I just think that, you know, it's frustrating that it's being downplayed. I understand that nobody wants their taxes to go up, but this is not just like, oh, let's just make a couple sacrifices. This is talking about losing half of their schooling, and then the process to get that back could take years. I mean, who knows if we go down that path, how
So-
long it will take to recover all of that.
But
So-
Melissa, why do you think that these things are going to be lost? Why do you think that?
If you guys cut all of that money that they're not asking for money to go get extra things. If this is to be for the level, you know, the level to last year, then like, because we have these added expenses of the transportation, all these, you know, inflation, yada, yada, the teachers' contracts, obviously all that stuff costs more money. So if
So-
we don't have that extra money,
But,
are
but
we not going to be firing teachers? Are you telling me nobody's getting fired?
I don't understand why somebody would. The problem, Melissa, is we have not gotten information about what it would cost to fund a level services budget. What information we've got is that there was a decision taken to add more employees. That's not a level services budget. So if you're adding more employees, how are you going to pay for them? And if the school committee decides to pay for those employees by cutting art and music, that's a school committee decision. That's not a town decision. And again, I'm so sorry that people are afraid those cuts are going to happen. I simply don't believe they will. And I want to ask you to ask yourself, why do you think that?
Well, I think
Where
that because
where are you getting that information? Who is
the
telling you?
information that so what I'm basing this on is if we are getting a 2.5 increase from what we had last year, and alone the teachers' contracts are 3 to 4% increase, right there, simple math, that's not enough money to pay people the way that they have been paid from last year, and then those contractual increases.
Okay, Melissa. Okay, I hear you. What percent of the total school
Well, just-
budget
Wait, wait,
you're-
are
I think- I
those
think
salaries?
We're going down a little bit of the rat hole here. I mean,
Hey,
I'm gonna make
thank
one
you, Scott,
comment.
but
I'm gonna
what
make
it-
one comment, we'll just kind of cut this off.
Okay.
The schools actually provide this information. The actual dollar amount increases for the personnel totaled $76,500, which was so the 99,000 we provided actually does cover those numbers. So that is something that, like I say, it was not accurate. But I think at this point, we need to cut that off, and we need to, I don't think, if there's anybody else that has some questions, I'd like to have them speak. Otherwise, I think we should get ready to adjourn.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. So is there anybody else for a question
I don't see anyone.
or want to speak? Okay, I think we can adjourn. So motion to adjourn. We have a
Second
second.
it, Mary?
Yes,
Aye.
I'm in favor.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.